On November 20, 2024, Defense Secretary John Healey stood in front of Parliament and announced that the Royal Navy was retiring 5 warships, 2 amphibious assault ships, a frigate, 2 fleet tankers, gone in a single afternoon. The official reason was cost. The reality was different. Britain was retiring ships it could not crew. The Royal Navy in 2025 has 32,590 personnel. That is 24% smaller than it was in the year 2000. The fleet has been cut to match. 16 Type 23 frigates have become 7. The amphibious capability that allowed Britain to put Royal Marines on a hostile beach has been deleted entirely, with no replacement scheduled until at least 2034. So how did the world's 6th largest defense budget produce a navy that cannot fill its own ships? The answer involves a £428 million write-down, a LinkedIn job posting for the head of Britain's nuclear deterrent, and a frigate that appeared in a James Bond film before being towed to a scrapyard. This is what national decline actually looks like on a balance sheet. In 1992, the year after the Soviet Union collapsed, HMS Westminster was launched at Portsmouth. She was a Type 23 frigate designed to hunt Soviet submarines in the North Atlantic. The Cold War ended before her commissioning, so she was repurposed for NATO patrols, Gulf operations, and counter-piracy work in the Indian Ocean. In 1997, her interior appeared in the James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies, standing in for 3 different fictional Royal Navy frigates. That detail will matter later. In October 2022, Westminster entered Devonport for a planned 2-year refit. She had already completed 1 life extension refit in 2017. This second upkeep was supposed to keep her in service until at least the late 2020s. By May 2023, the work was suspended. Engineers found her hull in such poor condition that the cost of repairs could not be justified. In May 2024, the Conservative government confirmed she would be placed up for disposal. In October 2025, she was towed out of Devonport on her way to Portsmouth. A frigate built to fight the Soviet Navy ended her career being dragged behind a tugboat to a scrapyard. She was not alone. HMS Argyle, HMS Montrose, HMS Northumberland, and HMS Lancaster. By the end of 2025, the active Type 23 fleet had been cut to 7 ships, down from 16. This is where the story stops being about ships. Think about that for a second. Britain did not lose these vessels in combat. There was no enemy action, no catastrophic accident. The ships were retired because the Royal Navy could no longer afford to operate them and could not crew them even if it could. In October 2022, the full-time trained strength of the Royal Navy stood at 29,500 sailors. By October 2025, that figure had fallen to 27,560. That is a drop of 1,940 trained personnel in 3 years. The trained strength has now declined by 16% since 2012. The current shortfall sits at least 1,000 trained people below the established requirement. But the deeper problem is hidden in another number. Over 4,500 personnel currently in the Royal Navy are untrained. They are in the system, on the books, drawing pay. They are not yet qualified to deploy on a warship. That's not a TIE-PO, by the way. A navy of 32,590 people contains 4,500 personnel who cannot go to sea. The pipeline is clogged. Recruits complete their 10 weeks of basic training, finish their trade course, and then sit in shore establishments because there are no ships available to send them to. Skills atrophy. Morale collapses. Older personnel watch new arrivals stagnate and submit their resignations. The system feeds on itself. In the 12 months ending March 2023, intake to the Royal Navy and Royal Marines dropped 22% compared to the previous year. The Royal Navy spends more than £20 million annually on recruitment advertising. That is roughly 10 times what the National Health Service spends per nurse. The return on investment has been catastrophic. The recruitment failure runs so deep that in 2024, the Royal Navy posted a job advertisement on LinkedIn for the position of Director of Submarines. This is the Rear Admiral responsible for Britain's elite underwater operations and the continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent. The most sensitive operational command in the Royal Navy was advertised next to corporate vacancies for marketing managers and HR consultants. And somehow, it gets worse. The recruitment partnership with the outsourcing firm Capita, signed in 2012 for £1.3 billion, has been described in defense circles as a total disaster. The contract was meant to modernize military recruitment. Instead, it became a case study in how to convert taxpayer money into administrative chaos. Application processing times stretched into months. Qualified candidates dropped out before they could be enrolled. The pipeline that was supposed to feed the armed forces became a bottleneck. Former Defense Secretary Ben Wallace blamed Generation Z. He stated that young Britons born between 1997 and 2012 are simply not joining the armed forces in the numbers his generation did. There is some truth in this. There is also a less convenient explanation. The civilian engineering job market pays better, offers more stability, and does not require 6-month deployments away from family. The Royal Navy is competing for technical talent against companies that do not require their employees to live inside a steel hull underwater for 90 days at a time. First Sea Lord Admiral Sir Ben Key has acknowledged this directly. He calls it a war for talent. He has publicly stated that the expectations of younger sailors regarding contact with loved ones cannot be met by the operational realities of submarine service. The hardware can be modernized. The Atlantic Ocean cannot. Which brings us to the second front of this collapse, the submarines themselves. In the first half of 2024, Britain's 5 Astute-class attack submarines managed approximately 90 days at sea combined. 5 submarines, 6 months, 90 days. There were extended periods during this time when the Royal Navy had 0 submarines deployed at sea anywhere in the world. The continuous at-sea deterrent, Britain's nuclear capability carried by the Vanguard class, remained unaffected. Everything else was on shore. The reasons are layered. Maintenance backlogs at Devonport, crew shortages, shortages of spare parts. The Astute-class boats are technologically advanced but operationally constrained by an industrial base that has been hollowed out across 2 decades. This is the context for the November 2024 announcement. Defense Secretary John Healey did not approach the dispatch box that day to deliver good news. He stood in front of Parliament and announced the immediate retirement of HMS Albion, HMS Bulwark, HMS Northumberland, RFA Wave Knight, and RFA Wave Ruler. His justification was financial. HMS Northumberland required at least £120 million in repairs after structural damage was discovered during her upkeep period. Scrapping her saved approximately £105 million. The Albion-class amphibious assault ships, Healey argued, had been effectively retired by previous ministers but kept on the books at a cost of £9 million per year. Healey's framing was clean. The ships were old. The money was needed elsewhere. The decisions were already made. Critics noticed something different. The constructive loss for retiring HMS Albion and HMS Bulwark was £428 million. That figure represents the written-down remaining value of 2 vessels that, according to former Defense Procurement Minister James Cartledge, could have been regenerated to combat capability in the event of a full-scale war. Cartledge stated publicly that he had personally sought and received those assurances from Royal Navy leadership before leaving office. Shadow Armed Forces Minister Marc Francois described the disposal as militarily illiterate. He went further and called it financially illiterate, given the amount the Ministry of Defense had spent refitting the ships in recent years before suddenly selling them at a discount. Brazil bought HMS Bulwark for approximately £20 million. That figure deserves to sit on its own for a moment. A vessel that cost the British taxpayer hundreds of millions of pounds to build, refit, and maintain was sold to a foreign government for the price of a London townhouse. She will be renamed NDM Oiapoque and continue her career under the Brazilian flag. But the deeper problem is not the sale price. The deeper problem is the capability gap. The Royal Navy's amphibious assault role, the ability to land Royal Marines on a contested coastline, has now been deleted. The replacement program is called Multi-Role Support Ship, MRSS. Cartledge has confirmed that MRSS will be at least 8 to 9 years away from operational service. Britain has chosen, deliberately, to gap a major military capability for nearly a decade. If you're wondering how that's even legal, so is everyone else. The financial backdrop makes this worse. In December 2023, the National Audit Office declared the Ministry of Defence's 10-year equipment plan unaffordable, with a deficit of £16.9 billion. Military officials have separately reported a defense budget shortfall of approximately £28 billion. Forecast costs for the Royal Navy alone have risen by £16.4 billion, an increase of 41% over the original estimates. These are not numbers from a department that has resources to spare. These are numbers from a department that is making cuts to vessels it currently operates, while simultaneously trying to fund vessels it has not yet built. The replacement frigate program is split between two classes. The Type 26, designed for advanced anti-submarine warfare, is being built by BAE Systems on the Clyde. 8 ships are planned. The first, HMS Glasgow, is scheduled to achieve initial operating capability in 2028. The remaining vessels will enter service incrementally between 2028 and 2035. The Type 31, a general-purpose frigate built by Babcock International, is intended to provide bulk numbers. 5 ships are planned. The first, HMS Venturer, is scheduled to be operational by the end of this decade. All 5 are expected in service by the early 2030s. Add the totals: 8 Type 26, 5 Type 31, 13 new frigates to replace a Type 23 fleet that originally numbered 16. If everything goes according to plan, and defense procurement timelines very rarely do, the Royal Navy will reach a frigate force of 13 vessels in the early 2030s. That is still a smaller fleet than the one Britain operated in 2010. In August 2025, Norway signed a £10 billion agreement to purchase at least 5 Type 26 frigates. This is welcome news for British shipbuilding. It is more complicated news for the Royal Navy, which now finds itself sharing a production pipeline with a NATO partner whose deliveries may compete with its own. There is a pattern here. Each individual decision can be defended on its own terms. Retiring Northumberland saved £105 million. Selling Bulwark recovered £20 million. Cutting the recruitment target reduced wage costs. Delaying Type 26 construction smoothed the cash flow. The accountants can justify every line item. The strategic effect, when those line items are added together, is a navy that is smaller than the one Britain operated in the year 2000, deployed across a security environment that is significantly more dangerous. A 1942 admiral would have called this losing the fleet without a battle. The 2024 phrase is rationalization. Admiral Lord West, the former First Sea Lord, has stated publicly that Britain is really poorly placed for major military action. Air Marshal Richard Knight has warned the Parliamentary Defense Committee that the country's armed forces are not currently prepared for large-scale war. These are not opposition critics. These are men who held the highest operational commands in the British military. There are some signs of recovery. By January 2026, total Royal Navy and Royal Marines regular strength had risen to 32,375. Inflow is now exceeding outflow for the first time in 4 years. Pay rises of 6% in 2023, followed by 3 to 4.5% in 2024, have improved retention. The government has eased medical entry requirements that previously blocked candidates with conditions like hay fever and eczema. The Strategic Defense Review of 2025 committed Britain to reaching 2.5% of GDP on defense spending by 2027, with 3.5% of GDP devoted to traditional defense by 2035. These are real improvements. They are also slow, and the Navy may have already passed a tipping point. The institutional knowledge lost when senior technical specialists resign cannot be replaced by a pay rise. The skills that walk out of Devonport when an experienced submarine engineer takes a job at Rolls-Royce are not coming back. There is a version of this story where Britain rebuilds. There is a version where the loss of expertise is so deep that even a doubled defense budget cannot reconstitute the force. The most positive realistic case is that the United Kingdom has just gapped large-scale naval amphibious assault for 10 years. The most negative case is significantly worse. Consider the wider pattern. Britain is not the only Western military facing this collapse. The United States Navy is retiring Ticonderoga-class cruisers it cannot crew. The German Bundeswehr has ammunition stockpiles measured in days. The French nuclear submarine force is under similar maintenance strain. The pattern is structural. A generation of post-Cold War decisions, made when peer adversaries seemed permanently absent, is reaching the end of its useful life. The bills are arriving simultaneously across the Western Alliance. Britain happens to be the cleanest illustration of the consequences. In 1997, HMS Westminster appeared in a James Bond film as 3 different fictional Royal Navy warships. The film was a fantasy of British naval power, set against a backdrop of media manipulation and fabricated wars. 28 years later, the real ship has been towed to Portsmouth to be cut up for scrap. The fleet she belonged to has been halved. The country that built her is debating whether it can afford to replace her at all. The Royal Navy that emerges from this decade will be a different institution. Smaller, more concentrated, more reliant on Allied capability for missions it once handled alone. Whether that constitutes a Navy capable of defending British interests in a contested global environment is no longer a question for ministers. It is a question that future events will answer for them. For now, the ledger reads as follows. 5 ships retired in 12 months, 16 frigates reduced to 7, an amphibious capability deleted, a submarine fleet operating at historic lows, a recruitment system that has been called a total disaster, a budget shortfall measured in tens of billions, a capability gap stretching to the early 2030s. This is what national decline looks like when you write it down.